Well, hey guys, we're going to start a series through the book of Acts. Now, the book of Acts is an absolutely incredible epic of how the church was formed and how God used the apostles through the power of the Holy Spirit to basically absolutely transform the known world. And it's pretty incredible. And so I'm excited to dig into this. The book of Acts was written by a guy named Luke. Now, we know some things about Luke. We know that he was a physician. We also know that he was a meticulous historian that gathered eyewitnesses' accounts of what had happened during Jesus' ministry and put them all together. And that's really how you get the book of Luke and you get the book of Acts. And so you could think of Luke as like the guy who's just kind of in the support group. Well, he's one person. The support for the Apostle Paul, who's like there to like patch him up after he gets beat up after a sermon session. And he's also just the guy who's just kind of quiet in the background, writing down information, and then after a while putting it all together, or as he's traveling, putting it all together and distributing it. And he's actually commissioned by what we assume to be a rich guy by the name of Theophilus. Now, this is not the guy's name, I don't think. I think it's just a general term to this benefactor, the person who basically commissioned this. And so that's who he's writing this to. And he begins the book of Acts addressing this person, saying, okay, so this is the part two of the former letter that I've written to you. And so it's kind of a neat thing, that we have a guy who's able to spend all this time with the Apostle Paul. It's just incredible. He's meeting all these people that saw Jesus in motion. It just, wow, incredible. What a privilege that Luke had to do all this. Now, the purpose of the book of Acts is to record the birth and growth of the church. It basically is an account of how the apostles, or the ministry of Jesus, the ministry of God, transitions from being centered on what Jesus is doing himself to what the Spirit of God rather is doing through different people, the apostles, the Apostle Paul, Peter, all these different guys. And it's a book that shows the work of the Holy Spirit. You could say basically that the Holy Spirit is the main character in the book of Acts. There's all these different characters, but the main character, the one that's doing the real work behind the scenes, or demonstrating it through these different people, rather, is the Holy Spirit of God. And the book of Acts demonstrates that the gospel is not just for the Jews, it's actually for all people. And you see this in Pentecost, the miraculous working of Pentecost, where people from every tribe and tongue and nation are really hearing the gospel for the first time through the gift of tongues. Suddenly these people are from all over the world, these proselytes, these different people, these different Jewish people from all over the world are hearing the gospel in their own language. And that's a sign gift to show, hey, this is real, this is powerful, God is doing something new. And you see that also with the conversion of the Ethiopian eunuch. You see that also with Paul's vision. And Cornelius, Peter's vision and the whole interaction that he has with Cornelius. You see this guy who's really, really devout, and he's seeking after God. And Peter is sent to him to show him the gospel more perfectly. We also see this international availability of the gospel through Paul's missionary journeys. Paul is not just ministering to the Jews, obviously it's to the Jews first, but he's also ministering to the Greeks. And he's going literally all over the place, demonstrating that the gospel is the power of God unto salvation. Another purpose of the book of Acts is to defend the legitimacy of the gospel. Actually in Acts chapter 1, Luke writes down, he talks about how there was all these signs that were infallible proofs of the reality of the Christian faith. Pretty incredible. It's also a book designed to encourage believers through persecution. Um, the book of Acts shows us that the Christian faith was born in the fires of affliction. And kind of the norm is that that's where it lives, and you actually see that throughout most of the world and throughout most of history. Christianity is not something that just sort of it drifts through and it makes an impact and nobody fights against it. Actually, what's more common is that when the gospel is going forward and challenging the cultural norms, there is a backlash and there is an attack. There is persecution. And so, that's a great demonstration that we shouldn't be surprised when the gospel is being attacked. That's kind of just the normal historical reality throughout history. So there's some main themes in the book of Acts. Well, obviously, the Holy Spirit he's the main character, as I said before. Evangelism and missions is forefront. These people are taking very, very seriously the Great Commission that Jesus gave them. They're going after the Jews, the Greeks, anybody, everywhere is what Peter, the other apostles, and Paul is doing. Another theme is church planting. Obviously, when you're fulfilling the Great Commission, churches are going to be formed. People will be saved, and then they're going to be formed together into bodies, local bodies. And another theme is actually unity in diversity. We see Jews and Gentiles working together for the same cause and for the same Lord. And it's an amazing demonstration of that. And then you see faith in action. Believers are obeying, they're suffering, and they're witnessing in the face of danger, and the gospel is going forward. So you could see basically Acts 1:8 as being a roadmap of the book of Acts. Okay, so you see Acts 1:8, it says, "Ye shall be witnesses unto me both in Jerusalem and all Judea and in Samaria and unto the uttermost parts of the earth." So it's really interesting. Actually, you see the focus in Acts 1-7 of being in Jerusalem. Okay, so that's where their main focus is. You see this mass conversion of people in the temple and mass baptism there. And then as you zoom out a little bit, you see Judea and Samaria being reached in Acts chapters 8-12. We see, in Acts 1-7, there's sort of this okay, so what do we do with these people? And then there's this mass persecution which drives them into Judea and Samaria. And then we see in Acts 13-28, we see Paul's missionary journey. So we have Jerusalem, we have Judea and Samaria, and then we have the uttermost parts of the earth where Paul is going passionately into all the earth. So why does the book of Acts matter? Why does this study matter? Well, the book of Acts matters because it shows how ordinary people filled with the Holy Spirit can change the world. God is not looking for anybody who's incredibly talented. He's just looking for somebody who's willing to be used by him. And that should give us incredible confidence. These people in the book of Acts were really no different than you and I. They weren't superheroes. They weren't super talented or gifted people. The Apostle Paul was, but most of the people actually in the book of Acts were just blue-collar guys. Even Paul, he's a blue-collar guy who's got a lot of education. But Peter, he's a fisherman. James, these different guys that are making a huge impact are just normal people that get filled with the Holy Spirit and fired up about the Great Commission. It's also a reminder that the mission field isn't finished. As time goes on, there are still people, even to this very moment, that are unreached. And Paul was passionate about reaching the unreached. And he spent his time just pursuing after these people. And we should have that same kind of spirit. We should have the same kind of spirit of the apostles, reaching out to our friends and neighbors, reaching out to the unreached and making an impact in the world. It also finally teaches us that we need to be expecting opposition in gospel advance. Again, this is not just like a fringe thing that happens. Oh no, oh, this is strange. This is not normal. We're being persecuted for our faith. No, that's the norm. And we should expect persecution when we are going forward with our faith. It also teaches that we need to be relying on the Holy Spirit of God. God could have designed it where, they just go out and right away in the beginning of the book of Acts, they start preaching about Jesus. But they're actually commanded to wait for the Spirit. And so they pray and they're waiting for the Spirit to be given. And it's because of the Holy Spirit of God that they're actually able to make the impact that they are able to make. And so we see that's really important for us today. These people, these apostles, these new believers, these early Christians were relying on the Holy Spirit of God. They were resting upon Him. They were filled with the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God was in control of them. And because of that, they were able to bear much fruit. They were able to make the impact that they were able to make. And it's no different for us as well. I mean, that's what we need as well. As New Testament believers, we need to be filled with the Spirit of God all the time. It also teaches us that we need to be bold in proclaiming our faith. How shall they hear without a preacher, the Apostle Paul said. Well, the answer is they're not going to hear without a preacher. And so we as believers, as New Testament believers, as those that are very, very similar actually to the believers in the book of Acts. I mean, we're the same, we have the same Spirit, we have the same gospel. We need to be carrying on their legacy and making an impact today in our Jerusalem, in our Judea and Samaria, and in the uttermost parts of the earth.